Hey everyone, it's Ed Gutowski. What I wanted to do was to welcome you to English 1B, and I wanted to create a welcome video where I just kind of introduce you to class, talk about the books that were required for class. Now I know the bookstore ordered a ton of books, so not everything that the bookstore ordered for our class is required. You can go check that in the announcement section or just watch this video. I'll talk about the books that we're going to use for class. Our class is going to be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to our class. So what is English 1B? English 1B is a class that's an introduction to literature class, and we basically focus on reading short stories, we'll read some poetry, there'll be some drama, and we're going to examine some of the great writers of literature and kind of examine why are these considered to be some of the great works of literature. It's going to be a really particularly fun class. I'm really excited about the books that we're going to read. So let me talk about the books. First book we're going to look at is This is Our Backpacker's Guide to Literature. It's got all the short stories we'll read, which we'll start reading in week 2. Week 1 is going to be really pretty easy. But the Backpacker's Guide to Literature has all the short stories, got some of the poetry, and I found it's affordable and it's a really good textbook. So the next book we're going to look at is a book that I've used before, and it's called It Can't Happen Here by Sinclair Lewis. And I think Sinclair Lewis is perhaps one of the greatest writers of the 20th century, and what he really did is he paved the way for all sorts of future writers for the 20th century, whether it's George Orwell, whether it's John Updike, whether I think he really opened up the doors for satire and things like The Simpsons. So, I mean, Sinclair Lewis was ahead of his time, and so the particular book we're looking at I've used before, and students really liked, because what Sinclair Lewis did in It Can't Happen Here is he created an imaginary United States where basically a demagogue runs for president and ends up running for president and is becoming a dictator. And this book was written in the 1930s. Really, Lewis was ahead of his time of criticizing fascism and criticizing Hitler. And it's this imaginary world where this guy comes to power and he starts to establish a dictatorship in America. It's got a really cool premise, and I think really what it did was it opened up the door again for future writers. Like, this is a novel that came out before George Orwell's writing 1984. It's a novel that was written in the 30s before World War II. Students really liked looking at this novel. Lewis can be a little bit challenging. So I'm glad I'm picking something challenging, but the premise is really kind of quite cool. So we'll get into It Can't Happen Here around maybe week 3 or week 4. Now we're also going to read a book. It's a graphic novel, and it is called, are we ready? It's called Maus. Now Maus is a graphic novel that deals with the Holocaust, so we'll spend a little bit of looking at Holocaust literature, examining the role of Holocaust literature. I just started teaching this novel the graphic novel last semester, and it got really positive response. Students really liked it. So I'm really excited to see what you guys think about that. I mean, we can raise all sorts of questions on whether or not a graphic novel is appropriate for an English 1B class. But again, I'm using it just because last semester I used it and students liked the lesson plan. The last book we're going to look at is called The Hate You Give. And again, it's another book that I used before. I got great student response. It's a great way to look at issues of race and racism in America. And it's also a way we can segue in looking at African Americans, how they contribute to the canon of literature, whether it be W.E.B. Du Bois, Langston Hughes, Toni Morrison. And I'm actually kind of quite tired of using that novel, but I've got such positive response that I just wanted to continue to use it. And then lastly, we're going to look at a Shakespeare play called Henry V. Henry V is epic. It's a play really about rhetoric. It's a play about war. It's a play about politics. And it's about a young, inexperienced king who decides to go to war for the glory of the British Empire. I know that Shakespeare can be hard for students in a ground class, and I know especially online there might be some issues. But I've developed a lesson plan. I mean, students are able to gravitate to ideas. They're able to get a basic understanding of the play. So I'll guide you through the play. It's a great play. So anyways, these are the novels for the class. And how I've set up the class is, what I'm going to do during the week is if there's a quiz on a short story, they'll be due by Wednesday, but everything else will kind of be due by the following Saturday. So you basically have kind of a week to complete coursework and course assignments. Students really seem to like having that flexibility. They kind of liked me holding them accountable by, just making the reading quiz due a little bit earlier. And so that's kind of the gist of class. Week 1's going to be easy because you basically have just 3 things. You need to send me a welcome email. There's a discussion board on the 10 poems that are going to be the foundation of our class, and then there's a short essay that you have to write. But if you need anything from me, feel free to send me an email. Come by my Zoom office hours. Otherwise, I'm really excited. I'll be excited to see what you have to say about the first week of class, and then in week 2, we'll kind of start getting rolling into things.